All right, welcome everyone to our webinar, and want to give you kind of an introduction to what we're going to be getting into throughout the presentation, and it's new build versus pre-loved. When it comes down to new build versus pre-loved, a lot of times realtors don't know a whole lot about the new build side of the equation, but the J-Prime Realty Group team specializes in new builds. And in order to be a specialist in new builds, we have to really understand the pre-owned side as well. Otherwise, it'd be hard to compare and contrast. So we're going to give you the pros and cons and make sure that you're clear on which is the better option for you. And with that being said, obviously what you don't know can hurt you. You may have heard that saying put differently, but in this case, we're going to talk about the 5 ugly truths every home buyer needs to know before they go shopping for a home. I'll start with a few admin notes. And number one, if you can't stay the entire time, use the link to book a call with us, because we want to make sure that you get all this information. And if you go through the entire presentation and at the end there's other questions, of course, we want to make sure that you reach out for that as well. But we're going to probably cover a good bit here, but not everything will be covered here. And when you sit with us for an appointment, then of course we can give you not only more information, but a game plan for whether you want to get into a home now or 12 months from now, 2 years from now. We've worked with clients in that situation. Also, we want to make sure you find the chat box and say hi and let us know what your biggest concerns are. So there could be quite a few. If this is a live presentation, if you're on the live presentation, then make sure you stack up these questions in the chat box while we're here, and we'll get to them in the question and answer at the end. If this is a replay, the chat box will be disabled, so that won't be an option. And the final thing is, attendees receive our free resources and rebate voucher. So there'll be several things that we're going to give you access to help you make decisions about the home buying process, especially like how much you can put in your pocket, how much you can afford. There's tools and resources out there that'll help you. And then a rebate voucher. Anyone that works with us, we like to help them out with usually a minimum of $500, depending on the situation and the price of the home. And we can do more if we are working with someone who's offering a bonus commission. So we advocate that we help you by being allowed to get a bigger commission through certain entities or sellers that'll help us with that. And that we offer to you just for setting a complimentary consultation. There's no obligation. We just want to walk you through, share the strategy with you. And that way, you know a whole lot more about the home buying process and what you'll need to do to get ready for it. Now, one of the things I love to let people know is most millionaires make or hold their wealth in real estate. I had a client out in California when I first got back into the real estate game a few years back, but they were in the military and they ended up moving back to San Diego, which they had bought a home 20 years earlier and probably paid around $250,000 for it. Came back 20 years later and the house is worth $850,000. So when you look at that, and they pretty close to pay this house off, you look at, let's say $800,000, and they had a 401k or the military version of that, and about $400,000 in the bank for that. So with 1.2 million, you subtract all their debt, and their net worth was over $1 million. So it's that simple to become a millionaire if, of course, you're buying properties in certain areas. You won't know that right up front, but let's just say if you don't buy a house now and 20 years goes by, you definitely won't have any equity. You're just going to be giving that rent to someone else. A little about me, I'm Julian Jackson. I am the team leader of J-Prime Realty Group. And I want to make sure that you guys know a little bit about me so you think I have a little bit of knowledge about teaching. But I was a previous mortgage broker, and I used to teach for the state of Texas. I wrote the course and taught it. We had, if not one of the highest, if not the highest first-time pass rate in the state at the time. I graduated law school, also a retired Army Instructor Pilot and Air Force Master Instructor. And as you can see here, author of a book. I've written several books, but the one I wrote it related to the mortgage industry was Home Loans Approved the Right Way. And what I want to do before we move any further is let you guys know there's going to be a quiz. So I'm going to give you the question and I'm going to give you the answer. So as we're going through this, you'll always know what to do whenever you need help with real estate. So the quiz: what do you do if you need help with real estate? Simply put, call J-Prime first. All right, so keep that in the back of your minds. All right, now I also want to let people know that we've done a lot of this, and we've helped a lot of people get into homes. Matter of fact, we've helped so many renters, buyers, and residents accomplish the dream of home ownership by sharing these ugly truths that we had to share it with you. If you're ready to learn about these 5 ugly truths, put a 5 in the chat box. All right, perfect. Okay, let's keep going. All right, well, here's a question for you to think about now, and hopefully at the end, we will have taken care of most of that anxiety. As a new home buyer, do you feel stressed or concerned, uncertain, or anxious? Because whatever those feelings are, they're legitimate. That's probably why you're here. But by the end, we will cover around 80% of your concerns. Now, the agenda, we're going to go through a couple of past clients so you guys can see that this is actually something that works and helps. Then we're going to talk about those 5 ugly truths, talk about those one-on-one appointments and what you need to do to make those happen, and then frequently asked questions. Bottom line is, we believe everyone deserves the dream of home ownership. If that's your dream, why not get it done sooner than later? All right, so here's some of our past clients. And one of the favorite things we like to tell people is we don't tell you no, we tell you how. And the reason we can tell you that is because we're experts in a lot of different things. And even for my team members, if there's anything they're not sure about, they come to me because, as I mentioned, not only am I a real estate team leader, but I've also been a broker since 2006. And there's a lot of different things that you need to know as a buyer agent that maybe listing agents don't always keep up with. But my team members have been shared, a lot of information has been shared with them on exactly what to do to make sure every buyer that has a chance to get into a home actually does, based on their budget, their time frame, and their locations, or their preferred location. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that happens. So whether it's down payment, whether it's credit issues, whether it's student loan debt, anything of that nature that will keep you from getting pre-approved for a home, we have solutions. So the more you work with us, the better you'll see how that works. And that's something exclusive to J-Prime Realty. So work with us, work with my team members, and that's something we can do for you. As you can see here, we had a 0 down physician's loan. This particular physician was in a position where the closing costs were going to actually be less than the down payment. And so there was an option to use a down payment, physician's 100 or 0% down physician's loan. With that physician's loan, he was able to use that to pay the down payment on like a $450,000 home. And at, let's say 3.5%, it was going to come out to, well over $10,000. He decided, even 12, I believe, over 13,000, but he decided to use that for the down payment because there was a program available with this lender, and his closing costs were actually under $10,000. So that's how you can see how these programs can make a difference depending on what your situation is. This particular gentleman had a 0 down and 0 closing costs. It happened to be in a USDA neighborhood, and the builder was offering to pay all closing costs. I believe he even got his $500 earnest money back. This young lady, same scenario, 0 down, 0 closing costs. And the closings happen pretty fast because a lot of these homes, when you think about new builds, the inventory is already finished. The closer we are to finish, the more likely we can get a break on the homes and do a lot more negotiation for you. This is a hometown hero. He was a firefighter. He and his wife really liked this house, and they went through a few things where it came off the market. They didn't have enough money to put down, and we had a chance to show them how to get gift funds. And after getting the gift funds, they came back. The house had been taken off the market, and then it fell through with the other people that were potentially going to buy it. They ended up coming back. It must be our destiny because it's back on the market, and it's the one we really, really wanted. And we got them under contract. They had the money from gift funds to actually put the money down, and now they own a home. This particular couple was military, so they had a VA loan, which is 0 closing costs, and they used the information from, or the incentives from the builder to help them buy the rate down. And after the rate was bought down, of course, they got into a home for like 2.25 interest rate, 0 closing costs, which means we were able to save them money up front and over time in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, moving on to the ugly truths. Ugly truth number 1, not knowing the difference between payment and closing costs. This turns out to be a huge issue for a lot of people because they feel like they were we misrepresent what this means, because you hear zero down and then you still have to bring money. And they're thinking, well, you said zero down. How come I'm bringing money with me? That's money down coming out of my pocket, because it's two different things. And once we started explaining this, it made it a lot simpler for people to at least start prepping for the process. Now, our goal is to make sure that you get a little bit of help on both sides if you need it. If not, then of course you're in a better place. But the first thing we want to start with is earnest money, because that becomes part of the down payment. The deposit that you put down to take the home off the market. It's basically in showing that in good faith, you actually are serious about taking this home off the market and not just curious. It's usually around 1% of the purchase price, which on a $200,000 home, you're talking about $2,000. This money is held in escrow and later applied towards your down payment, as I mentioned earlier, or closing costs, depending on where it could help you the most. Now, if the sale falls through, you usually get your money back unless you walk away from the deal without using a contract contingency. These are the things that we look out for you. We don't want you to lose your earnest money. And if for some reason you decide this isn't the right house for you and you have a good reason, you're going to get that back. And if for any reason it doesn't meet certain requirements contractually, then you're going to get that earnest money back. Now, for the down payment, this is the portion of the home's purchase price you pay up front. It goes through the lender. So when you think about that, you got to think, if I'm getting a loan and I put money down, they're going to take whatever percentage that is and apply it toward the price of the home and reduce the balance. So it's usually expressed as a percentage depending on the loan program. Some are zero down, like FHA, or correction, USDA and VA. And then you got 3%, some conventional, you got 3.5% FHA, other conventional are 5%, and the most common people have heard over the years is 20%. But it's not the most popular. The FHA program has been very popular for the last few years. And you're going to see why when we get into that section about loans, home loans. The example here is on a $300,000 home with a 10% down payment, you pay $30,000 at closing. So the earnest money you pay up front, and then the down payment and closing costs you pay at the closing table. So that $30,000 at closing, and then the balance on the loan will be $270,000. That's what you'd have to make payments toward, is that $270,000. And now you have equity in the home based on what you put down. Now, closing costs. These are the fees and expenses you pay to finalize a loan and transfer ownership. So there's a lot of different things that are involved. It's usually range from 2% to 5% of the loan amount, but it includes appraisal fees, title insurance, the lender's fees, escrow fees, recording fees, all the things, including even realtor's fees. All the fees that are getting paid all come from the loan amount. Now, some of the stuff you have to pay out of pocket, or you can wrap it into the loan. So if you're wrapping it into the loan or the equity from the property from the seller side, and the checks will come from that side to pay all these entities when that happens. So once the house sells, the check comes in from the buyer. Again, the seller gets the money and distributes the funds, but it comes from that check that gets assigned, or the mortgage that gets assigned to the buyers. So you have a lot of leverage, because without that loan closing, or without that purchase being funded, as the lenders call it, then there's no money to distribute. And obviously that makes the buyers a pretty big deal. So we want to make sure you're in a good position to do that. Now, these funds don't go toward reducing the loan balance. They cover the services and stuff that we just mentioned. So in short, the down payment is part of the purchase price, goes toward the loan. Closing costs cover the expenses for the process of buying the actual house. Now, for us, when you put these two together, that's all going to get covered at closing. So you go to a title company to close. So the lender is going to give you all the numbers you need, take that to the closing, and all the documentation you need to say that you're going to be the owner of the house. You take that to closing. You sign anywhere 50 to 100 documents, and that's called the closing. But what we want to make sure that we do for you as realtors is that we know a few ways to use other people's money so that you save money up front. Now, ugly truth number 2, not knowing the difference between pre-qual and pre-approval. This is a big one, because a lot of times people get pre-qualified and they think that means there's never going to be any issues, because they don't understand the difference. We want to make sure that there's no misunderstandings. when you're pre-qualified, it's basically the initial estimate from a lender of how much you might be able to borrow. And that's only because they're taking your application, they get basic financial information, your income, your debts and assets, and check your credit score. And there's really no documentation required. So they're looking at that information and saying, hey, based on what you gave us, what you told us, you might qualify for this amount. So it helps you get an idea of what your price range could be. And then it's not formal. It's not a guarantee. It's just a starting point. So if you understand that part, then when you get that pre-qualification, usually it's something they can give you quickly over the phone. When you first have a conversation with them based on the numbers they put together, boom, they have a little calculator and they look and they go, yeah, it looks like you might qualify for this amount. But what we really want to shoot for is the pre-approval. It's a conditional commitment from the lender for a specific loan amount. You actually know how much they're willing to lend you based on this pre-approval. It's based on verified financial documents, which are things like your pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements, credit. And that also shows the seller and your real estate agents that you're serious. And you're definitely qualified as a buyer to make an offer on a home, because you're going to need this when you make an offer, especially on pre-owned. New build's a little bit different, and we'll talk about that. The formality is it's much stronger than the pre-qual, but it's not the final approval. A lot of times I want to make sure that before our clients go looking for anything, we have a final approval, what we call fully underwritten pre-approved. Because not only does that carry real weight, it means it's gone through the entire process where the underwriters have checked not only your credit and verification of your job and employment and the history of where you've lived and where you've worked and all of that. They've also checked the federal database to see if there's any liens against you. And as long as all that stuff is good to go, you can typically get a pre-approval. Now, unfortunately, what some people do is they get pre-approved with a fully underwritten pre-approval, and they may make some mistakes with their credit. Once they get approved, they're like, oh, it's time to go shopping. I'm gonna tell you now, and I'll tell you again later, don't do that. Don't start using credit to shop once you find out you're approved. Now, we keep hearing that people ask about the price of the home or how much they're qualified for. So you can hear that you're qualified for $300,000 or $400,000. But we want to make sure people understand why you should focus on monthly payment instead. Because your monthly payment isn't just principal and interest. It's what we call PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Of course, the principal directly reduces the amount you owe on the home. So once that loan is closed and you start making payments, a portion is going to go toward the principal balance. Another portion is going to be the interest, and that pays back the lender, because as long as you have a note on the home, they want to get paid through the interest first. And so the first 5 years, especially the first year, you're going to see when you make those payments, the majority of whatever you sent in is going to the lender, because they're taking the risk on you. They want to get paid first, and then that way, if something happens, at least they have something out of it. Now, that's also why you have private mortgage insurance and a mortgage insurance premium, depending on whether it's conventional or FHA. But those are designed really to protect the lender, just in case someone goes into default on the loan. Now, the taxes, we know the government gets paid those, and then the insurance carrier gets the insurance. But the big thing here is the payment is different on the same priced home. The monthly payment is different on the same priced home based on 3 of these factors: interest, taxes, and insurance. Now, the insurance is something you can shop for on your own. So we want to get into a lot of this other stuff, right? So how do interest rates affect your monthly payment? Higher interest rates equal higher monthly payment for the same priced home. Lower interest rates equal lower monthly payment for the same price home. So if you hear that you got qualified for $300,000, but you go to a neighborhood where the monthly payment's going to be higher, you may not qualify for $300,000 if you maxed out your debt to income ratio. So monthly payment is going to be way more important for buyers. For sellers, it's different. You want to know how much you can get for your house so you can determine how much equity you have and how much you're going to net when it sells. But for buyers, monthly payment is just way more important. If I were to send out a list to different builders or different places, even lenders, and say, I want to keep their payment at $2,500 and we're buying a house on this side of town, they're going to look up the tax rates and everything and determine, all right, based on this tax rate and this interest rate, the payment at $2,500 is only going to get them $280,000. but on the other side of town, it would be 300,000. So that's why we want to make sure that we don't just automatically say you're getting approved for a certain amount, because there's certain neighborhoods where you're going to do a whole lot better because the interest rates are better. And if the interest rates are better, or a builder, for instance, buys down the rate, or we can get a concession from the seller of a pre-owned home to buy the rate down, all these things can help. Or if you have the money to buy the rate down, because you absolutely have to have a pre-owned home, then those are all options. And for an example here, on a $300,000 loan, you can see the payments are considerably different, just under $200 a month. And if you think about it, at a 4%, the payment might be $1,432. 5%, $610. 6%, $1,798, and then 7%, $1,995. So somewhere between $180, $200 a month is what you're going to save, depending on the interest rate on a $300,000 home at 4, 5, 6, and 7%. Now, you probably heard this term called a rate buy down. And it's really confusing to a lot of people, because in their mind, they think they're hearing ARM because they heard ARMs were bad and that got a bad rap. But an ARM is called an adjustable rate mortgage, meaning after the period that the loan is at, let's say 5 years, it's at a certain percentage. At the end of that 5 years, it becomes a variable rate, which means you have no idea what the rate's going to be at that point. This is not an ARM. This is the easy way to explain this is, let's say you get qualified at the 7% you see here. So you get qualified at 7%. They know you can make a $1,995 a month payment based on your debt to income ratio. But in this case, we're going to start with a 3-2-1 buy down. So I always think you have to end with 0, right? So it's a 3% difference, a 2% difference, a 1% difference, and then 0. You're not going to get any buy down on that 4th year. So let's say the first year you get a 4% interest rate. You're going to pay $1,432 the first year. If it's a 3-2-1 buy down, the second year you're going to get a $1,610 will be the second year payment. The third year payment will be $1,798, and then from 4th to the 30th year for the rest of that time frame, it's going to be $1,995. Now, why is this good? Well, think about it. If for some reason you're making an $1,800 a month payment on your rent right now, and you see a house and you're thinking, man, I wish I could afford that extra $200, but right now that's really going to strap us. We won't be able to go, put enough gas in the car to last us the entire month. We may not be able to go out and eat that 1 or 2 times, or we may not have that extra money to be able to, have something in an emergency. We don't want to give that up right now. Well, if you know that you were qualified for $1,995, but your first month's payment is $1,432, that's actually less than you were paying at $1,800 in rent. The next year is even less than what you paid in rent. And then the next year is actually right at what you would have been paying in rent. So you saved all that money up front. And what can you do if you're saving that kind of money? Maybe pay off a car. If you know the car's going to get paid off in the next 3 years with a normal payment, you can add to it and get it paid off faster. Maybe you got credit card debt that you paid off. And potentially you might even get a raise. So when you know all these things are going on, the buy down could be fantastic for you, because now you can actually afford the house with a lower payment per month before you get to the $1,995, which you might have felt was a little bit out of your range. Now you have time to build that up. In addition to that, the rates might even decrease. So if something changes over that time frame, and instead of 7%, the interest rates go down to 5%, you can actually refinance at the 5%, and you already see what the payment's going to be. Now, if you've paid off a little bit of your mortgage by that time and it's 5%, obviously, if your loan amount is $300,000 and you paid down $10,000 over 5 years, then you're going to get a refinance at $290,000 at 6%. It'll be a little bit lower. But this is how you can use the rate buy down and why interest is so important. Now, if you feel like you've learned a lot, please put me in the chat box, and then we'll continue here with the taxes and insurance. Okay, great. Fantastic. I want to make sure that everyone sees now how taxes and insurance can affect the payment. As you see here, it's a monthly mortgage breakdown of PITI, the principal, interest, tax, and insurance. So in this case, we're talking about a $300,000 home with a 10% down and a 5% interest rate. So we talked about the 5% on the previous page and how much that payment will be on a $300,000 house. Well, this one is going to be, with a 10% down, it's going to be $270,000 is the total principal balance. But when you put the principal and interest together, the payment comes out to $1,449. Then you add property tax. So as you can see, that gets added to. So normally they charge it for the year, and you divide it by 12, and that tells you what that part's going to be added every month, and the insurance. So can you shop for your own insurance and maybe get something better than 125? Potentially. But these are all the things that are in your control, and things you get to think about when you're purchasing a home. So in this situation, you're going to end up with an $1,874 payment per month. But if you were to move to another side of town or pick another side of town, what if the property taxes were a little bit lower and you end up paying just $250? So that's going to drop your payment by $50. And if you still wanted a $300,000 house, you may be able to go to a nicer home because you can afford a little bit more and still make the same monthly payment. And that's the goal. So you think about principal, interest, tax, insurance. The interest, taxes, and insurance could change the amount of home you can buy based on these three factors. If you have any questions, go ahead and put that in the chat for me, and we'll keep moving. So ugly truth number 3, not knowing the different lenders provide different options and programs. So we've seen a lot of lenders who like to tell people, only stay with me, don't go with anyone else. And as a lender myself, I've always known it's really hard to beat some of these programs where they're paying the closing cost and buying down interest rates. So I'm never going to ask a client to stick with a particular lender when I know there's a better option out there for them. I'll leave it up to them, but we've had lenders that will potentially tell clients, hey, if you get your credit checked, it's going to drop your score too much and you won't be able to qualify if your credit score drops. And the big issue with that is the way the lending process works is if you get your credit pulled typically within the same 30 days, some people say 14, but let's just say the 14 to 30 days time frame, it only counts as one pull. They see that you're shopping for a mortgage, and those other pulls after the first one don't change your score at all. So whatever they pulled, it's going to stay there until you decide on which home you want to get. So that's why we look at it from that perspective. But when you're decided on a lender to use, there's some factors you want to consider, and that's like, what type of experience does a lender have? We have several lenders. I don't ever tell anyone on my team that they pick one lender. I want them to have many lenders because they have many different programs. Some have down payment assistance programs that others don't have. Some have these really good gift programs that you can use that other ones don't have. Some know how to get certain credits to help your income look better versus others that don't. And we want to make sure that whichever lender has the best package for you, whether it's through a builder or someone that we work with outside of building, that you get the best bang for your buck. So what type of experience does the lender have? That's another thing we have to think about. How many lending avenues do they have available to you? Again, there's a lot of different programs out there, and we want to make sure that you have access to all of the different programs. Now, in this chart, you're going to see that across the top, that word typical is what you really want to focus on. Things change, especially in the conventional world. Sometimes they have a 0 down program. Sometimes they have a 1% program. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5. But the most typical payment you're going to see is 20%. But it's the credit score, right? If you're trying to get approved for a conventional loan, sometimes you can go as low as 620. And the debt to income ratio is 50%, meaning once you have about, let's say $5,000, you can potentially put $2,500 a month toward a home. Now, that's before you subtract certain other debts that you have, and that's where the debt to income ratio comes into play. When it comes to the minimum down payment, it's, like I said, unconventional 1 to 20%. Now we move over to VA. Now VA says 500 or 580 credit score is what you can do at a minimum, but we happen to know that there's certain lenders out there that can go into the 550s and still get you approved, especially if everything else looks good in your profile. So with them, it's 43 to 65% because they look at compensating factors that may help because veterans have other things that they may be getting to help them with this particular part, the max debt to income ratio. So again, we know which builders, we know which lenders have programs that are going to be the most beneficial. And as long as people are flexible on location, a lot of times we can get them in a house sooner than later. And the minimum down payment for veterans, 0. Same thing with USDA for down payment, but credit score 640. We've had clients where they came in with a 632, and we knew if they could get their score up by 8 points and they followed a certain plan, that would get them over. We had a client we did that for. They ended up with a 650. The wife was already over like a 660, and next thing you know, they got qualified for the FHA but they didn't want to put any money down. And we told them as an incentive to get your credit up, let's try to go get that USDA program, and you would save the down payment. Now, of course, on a $300,000 house, that's over 10 grand. So, of course, they're going to shoot for that. Now, FHA is, again, 580, similar to the VA, but you get the 55% debt to income ratio, and then you want to put 3.5% down. Now, this is one of the most popular programs that's been around for a while. It requires fully documented loans, so you need all the paperwork. It's going to be hard to do for 1099 or people who have to use bank statements or other things like that to get approved. But if you have your typical W-2 job and those other things, yeah, probably wouldn't hurt, won't hurt as much as just doing the bank statements and stuff like that. But this is one of the most popular, and with a 580 credit score, 55% debt to income ratio, 3.5% down, a lot more people can become homeowners. So if you've ever heard that 20% down, then yeah, they are just sharing that old school knowledge that used to be a fact, but now there's many different options you have to move into a home based on the loan that you pick up. Now, some of these other financing options, the down payment, out-of-pocket cost, you want to discuss that with the lender because they can tell you, they'll let you know up front. You could potentially use your 401k. A lot of times, instead of adding 1% to your interest rate, which could take your rate from 5 to 6% or 6 to 7, and you're doing that over the whole life of the loan. And of course, there's going to be penalties or no penalties on how you pay it back. There's some grants, there's some that are loans, and just depends on what program you choose. But if you use your 401k, you could usually get it for like 1% interest rate that you're paying yourself. So you're borrowing it from your 401k to cover the down payment. And then once you pay that off, that goes back to your account, but you only use 1% interest versus 7. Obviously, if you have savings, if you have a mutual fund, you can borrow from or take money off of that. Sometimes even borrow from that. And then the gift funds from family members. There's a program called Home Funded from one of our lenders, and it's very specific to that lender. But they will allow you to set up an account like a registry that you do on Facebook for the GoFundMe or something like whatever that account is called. But just like that, people can start putting money into that account for you. And as it adds up, you'll get enough money to cover your down payment. And this particular bank, this mortgage company, will match it up to like $1,500, and they give you some other bonuses and a bunch of other stuff to help you. But again, that's one particular lender we know. Not every lender is going to offer that. So if the realtor that you're working with doesn't know about these things, they definitely can't give you as many options as working with one of the J-Prime Realty Group team members. Down payment assistance programs, some can pay up to 7%. Now, again, when you get a down payment assistance program, the interest rate is used to pay back the extra money you borrowed too. So that might be why you see a 6% interest rate go to 7%, because of course the bank wants to get paid back. And if you get down payment assistance, you essentially have no skin in the game. And that's what they're looking at. They're like, well, if there's no risk, the person has a greater chance of walking away from the deal, or walking away from the home if it goes into default. And if we give them that money, we want to get that portion up front as quickly as possible. And the easiest way to do that is to raise interest rates and collect a lot more money up front. And then, of course, closing cost assistance. Some of the programs will help you cover closing costs. On your typical FHA, you'll hear that most people will try to get 5%. Why? Because they can get 3.5 to cover the FHA down payment, and then there's 1.5% left to help them with closing costs. And then as realtors, we go in and talk to the sellers and say, hey, we need to get together and talk about how we can get a concession from you guys to help us cover the rest of their closing costs. Now, we go through, stringent negotiations to make sure that happens for everybody we work with, because we want to make sure that you get the best deal possible when you're a buyer. Now, that also requires that your realtor knows what market you're in. There's a buyer's market, there's a seller's market. When we're in a seller's market, meaning there's very low inventory, it's really supply and demand. In a seller's market, conditions favor the seller, so they can ask for more. When conditions favor the buyer, it's a buyer's market, the buyers can ask for more. So if your realtor's thinking, well, across the country, we heard it's this, or this, that's not enough. An expert in real estate knows the local area better than the national numbers. So by not just the city, but a neighborhood, they can go look up the data in the neighborhood, and it may say these homes are taking 90 days to move, and The seller's market is saying 3.6% inventory, and just across the city, it could be seven months of inventory. So 7 months of inventory would mean it's a buyer's market. 3 months would be a seller's market. Which one is more likely to give you some concessions? So you might go look at one house and think, hey, this seller said they could do X, Y, and Z. Why is it when we go over here, they don't act the same way? Well, it's supply and demand. Supply and demand in each neighborhood. And some places are more popular than others, especially when you're jockeying for school districts. And that's what you got to be thinking about the entire time. Now, there's other programs that you can discuss with your realtor. Those other ones typically with a lender, but with my team, these are things you still want to bring up because they'll let you know, they'll put you in the right direction. What we don't like to do is what happened to me when I first got started. Whoever I was working with was like, hey, just go get pre-approved first, and then I'll talk to you. Well, that doesn't feel very good. And you're like, get pre-approved for what? What am I worried about? And if you're wondering if your credit's good enough, then you're like, I don't even know what that means because no one's ever explained credit. Well, I just shared with you what the credit should look like. And if you check your scores on a regular basis, you kind of know from that chart exactly where you stand. But a lot of times realtors just, hey, go over there and talk to the lender and don't talk to me until you've done that. So we want to make sure that you understand what you're going to be asked before you go. And of course, we're going to connect you with the best lender out there. The lenders we work with, we vetted, we know they're really strong. And before we hand you off to anybody, we're going to make sure we describe how they do business, what to expect, how to expect it, and all the different options that are best for you. We've done that for you. So you're not going to sit there and have someone who's been in the business for 2 years. The only product they know how to do is an FHA loan. And when USDA pops up there, they try not to even let you know about it. Even though you got a 700 credit score, your debt to income ratio is 36%, they're not going to tell you because they don't know how to do it. And we don't want that to happen. So these are the things we have to explain and we look out for our clients. Now, the rent-to-own program is available. You got student loan forgiveness, realtor rebates. Let's say that you are in a situation where you have an apartment or a home that you're renting and you're thinking, man, my lease won't be up for a long time. Well, if we're helping you move from one location to another and we can see where the commission they're giving back will be enough to help you with a termination fee or part of a termination fee. We had a married couple that we worked with a few years back, or they actually were going to get married after they purchased the home and start a family. Well, their lease wasn't going to be up for another 6 months. And then they found their dream home and they're like, oh my God, we wish we could get that one before prices start going up. Because this was in like January, or December when we met them, and the house is gonna be finished in like February. And they said, shoot, if we could get this one, we would be happy to move in now, but we're gonna be stuck because of our lease. And we said, well, how much is the lease termination fee? And I think they said like $1,500, and there was two. One was $1,000, one was $1,500. We said, well, we can help you guys maybe with $1,000, maybe $1,200. And they were like, well, that would be awesome. If you can help with that, we could get this house. Turns out that they qualified for zero money down, and the earnest money was low, and the closing costs were getting covered. So when they looked at it, they were like, well, shoot, rather than moving to another apartment or another rental home, we're going to end up paying less for that. It's like, that's absolutely right. And we will talk about that here in a minute. But these are things we can do to help you as realtors that you may not hear anywhere else. Now, of course, we can show you reduced priced off-market homes. And of course, we're going to help negotiate with seller concessions. And here are the credit don'ts. I used to put credit do's on here, but a lot of times you start talking about the credit do's and don'ts together and it gets really confusing. So we want to make sure that once you're approved, that's the big thing. Once you're approved, don't touch this stuff because that's where you start hurting your qualification or your approval. You do not close any of your revolving accounts. Keep accounts open and keep the balances low. If they're already low, don't change the way you use them. Keep them low. Do not allow any accounts to go into default or collections. Do not make any late payments on any accounts. Keep paying them on time. If you got to cut back on eating out or whatever to make sure that happens until you get into that house, you don't want to do those things. Don't make any purchases using credit. Even if you see the best deal on a television, it's under $50. And they're like, oh, they got this $300 television that will fit perfect in your kitchen, and you wanted that extra TV, and all of a sudden it's on sale. Don't put it on credit. Don't buy vehicles. A lot of people go to get approved for a loan on a house, and they go, oh, my credit must be better than I thought it was. So they go buy a vehicle, and then all of a sudden they're no longer approved for the house. So again, don't do these things. Do not refinance any installment loans, secured, unsecured, or make any new ones during this time frame. Do not apply for credit or have your credit checked. Do not increase any credit lines, credit cards, loan balances, let it all stay where it is, because whatever you got approved for now, as long as you don't touch any of these things, you're more than likely going to continue to stay approved. Again, the final piece is the liens, federal government liens that could potentially be there. As long as none of that's an issue, once you get that pre-approval, you're in good shape. And again, we're going to shoot for the fully underwritten pre-approval, because with that, it's like shopping with cash, and you know exactly how much you can get, and it's not very likely you're going to lose or become no longer approved for that loan. All right, ugly truth number 4, not knowing the difference in cost between renting, new builds, and pre-loved homes. As I mentioned, there's a lot of different things you got to think about. In this case, we're going to talk about why consider buying, because there's a total move-in cost that I don't think a lot of people that are renting, especially if you're renting a home, but you know that there's an admin cost, there's an application fee, pet deposit, security deposit, first month's rent, and of course, no earnest money, but that's what you're going to be paying to the builder. If you look at that, that's $3,600. Excuse me, $3,600, which today is probably closer to $4,600, because you're probably looking at $2,000 a month for a family of 3, and that's the security deposit plus the first month's rent and all the other fees. So it's going to take you somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000 to move into another rental home, total out-of-pocket cost. Now, if you move into the new builds with a earnest money requirement of $500, and those do exist, and they cover your closing costs, you get into a USDA loan, you happen to be a veteran, or you use down payment assistance, you're not going to come out of pocket with anything, and you're going to only have to come up with $500. Now, let's say that they get everything paid except for maybe $3,000 for your closing cost. Well, would you rather spend $3,000 in closing costs plus the $500? Would you rather spend $3,500 to get yourself into a house where you don't have to pick, if you have a kid crawling through the carpet, they won't be picking out someone else's toenails from a used rental home or something like that? Or would you rather take the brand new home and have the same $3,600 go toward that versus for the rental? I think pretty much everyone is going to think, I'm going to go for the house that is brand new, usually has a little bit more space, and there's a whole lot of other options that make it more beneficial. Now, I will say, when you're looking at new build versus pre-owned, you just have to be very careful and know what you want and don't want, because some of the deal killers that you might think are like, all right, I need space, I need acreage. Well, as you know, if you're into a lot of these new build communities, there's like maybe 10 yards between each house. So you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're like, man, I'm counting on moving in one of these because it looks perfect for me. The price looks right, everything looks good. But then you go out and look and you're like, these homes are like right next to each other. I want at least an acre of land. Well, that might put new builds out of your price range. And then you have to go look for homes that are pre-owned. Maybe you have livestock or something you want to put out there. And obviously you're not going to have that in a community of new builds. So new build versus pre-owned, the cost savings. So many builders offer incentives that can cover part or all of your closing costs, as well as they have those 100% financing options that we just went over. And again, that saves you thousands up front compared to buying pre-owned. As I look here, the earnest money, as we talked about before, it's 1% for pre-owned, $500 for the builder. Option money, nothing for the builder. Inspection, it's optional for builders. Appraisal, $0. Down payment, again, depends on the loan. Closing costs, right? So when we get to closing costs, we're talking about incentives from the builder can actually cover all of it or a portion. Covered, the title policy, usually covered by the builder, it's not going to come out of your pocket, or the sellers, which they'll usually try to use to add into their budget and what they're going to get back for their net. Then there's an origination fee. A lot of lenders are going to charge 1% of the loan amount, but builders usually waive that. If they don't, then your realtor is going to be checking to make sure. Either way, we want you to know how much you got to come out of pocket with when you go to closing. Warranty is actually by the builder, so you don't have to worry about it. A lot of those repairs and things that you typically have to worry about, you don't worry about those with builders. So the total cost could be as low as $500 for a builder. Whereas if you don't get any help, you don't get any down payment assistance, you don't get any of those other things taken care of through the seller and negotiations on our side, it could be $15,000 or more. Now, we're going to do the best we can either way, but we don't want to take any of these things off the table until you've looked at all your options. We've seen a lot of people who, typically work with someone who doesn't know a lot about new builds, but we'd be remiss in our duties if we didn't show you everything on the market. Because the last thing we want to do is show you only pre-owned homes, and then one day one of your friends comes into town, you find out 3 months later that they're in this brand new community that's only 2 blocks down the road, and they told you they got all these specials and stuff, and they barely had to come up with any money. You're like, why didn't my realtor show me that? And we don't ever want that to happen. We want you to be in a position where you're always getting the best deal and learning all the best options. And the best way to do that is to call J-Prime first, right? All right. Now, what does it look like? What does it look like when you talk about cost savings for new build versus pre-owned on a $200,000 home? Again, you're not going to find many of those, but I want to keep the numbers kind of low here so you can kind of see. House double that amount, you might save double this number. But if you think about it, we got pre-owned home and new builds and the potential saving. So upfront repairs and updates. Think about that. Sometimes you move into a house that's over 10 years old. It's interesting that the warranty is 10 years old because everything seems to fall apart at the 10th year, right? And then you have to start thinking about replacing stuff. You might have to get the roof replaced. You might have to get the HVAC replaced. You might have to get the flooring and then new appliances and all that stuff. So we're looking at $10,000 to $25,000, depending on how steep the repairs are. But in a new build, there shouldn't be any repairs. And it's brand new, so it's under warranty. That first year, they're going to cover everything craftsmanship and cosmetic. If it's something that happened in that house that shouldn't have happened, that first year, they're going to cover everything door to door. The second year, typically what you're going to see is they cover everything between the walls, typically the plumbing and electrical. And then the foundation and the structural is going to be a 10-year warranty. But that's the typical numbers we hear, at least in Texas. And I think it's probably about the same in most places. But that's what you want to be thinking about. That stuff won't need to be covered or worried about when you buy a new home because you're basically going to have to warranty take care of it. And we typically bring up the inspection at that point because if you're going through and you're doing the walkthrough and all those different things, you're going to need inspection. But we'll get into that here in the next section. But we're talking about saving $10,000, $25,000, higher utility bills because the older systems have poor insulation and stuff like that. You have to think, man, if the older systems and the air conditioning aren't in good shape, how much energy are we leaking? How efficient is the home? So the bills could go up. And if the bills go up, as you see here, $1,200 to $2,400 a year over a 5-year period, $6,000 to $12,000. So just from these two alone, you're already seeing there's a big difference. And then maintenance and repairs. Yes, there's going to be replacements and ongoing fixes that you're going to have to worry about. You might inherit someone else's problems. Whereas a lot of this stuff is covered under the builder's warranty when you get new build. Then there's financing incentives. So the buyer pays $4,000 to $10,000 in closing costs, whereas the builder may cover all of it. Now, again, we can get you help to cover these other things, but there's almost always a trade-off when you go pre-owned. If we are able to get money for them to cover these different things, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a lower interest rate because you have to go through a separate lender. The seller doesn't have a lender. You have to find your own. And because of that, your interest rate will be whatever the going market rate is, and you'd have to get concessions for them to buy it down. But if they buy down the interest rate, they're probably not going to also give you concessions to cover your closing costs. So you have to find a balance and hope that it works out. Now, as realtors, we can get you down to the bare bones, especially if you're working with J-Prime Realty. We can help you get it to the bare bones. But again, we want you to look at both cases and determine which one works better for you before you make that final call. And then lower resale appeal. Why? Unless you make major updates, of course, the new build home is going to have more modern features and more efficiencies and things of that nature that the older homes just won't have at this point. There's always been this myth that, older homes were built better. Not anymore. If that was ever the case, the new build homes are built with a lot of different things that are, more beneficial to you than maybe what you've heard in the past. They're built really strong and some of them even built for, hurricane type weather, even though the homes are not in a hurricane area, because that's how that builder builds. The insulation could be way better because they do the blown in insulation and stuff like that. But overall, you're talking about somewhere between $35,000 to $80,000 in savings over the first 5 to 7 years. So again, saving money up front and over time. So anytime someone asks about our commission, hey, you guys seem to be getting a lot. Well, if a realtor just stands there and lets you do all the work and just smiles at you every time you go work with them, yeah, they probably haven't earned that money. But if a realtor is helping you save $80,000 because they shared all this information with you, showing you how not to have to take money out of your pocket for a down payment, showing you how you can get a lower interest rate, which is going to help you save 100,000 or more over 30 years if the interest rates are, way lower where you're going and getting help with that versus having to pay the max interest rate because you didn't know these other options. So yes, we're going to make a decent amount of money, but we're going to help you. And you're going to continue to see just how much we can help you as we get to the next section. And that's ugly truth number 5, not following the right process in the right order at the right time. So when you think about that, here's just one page. If nothing else, let me know if you want this. I'll send this to you directly, but it's part of the presentation that we share with our clients. But this says things a realtor can keep going wrong during the process, during that journey. And I'm not going to go through 89 of these things. It could be more. We've seen inspection reports that have more problems than this. But the buyer could be an issue, which obviously if you're working with us, we're not going to let you have to deal with that. We're going to do the heavy lifting for you. But the seller could have issues. One of the things on here says, they may have lost motivation. Job transfer doesn't go through. Can't find a suitable replacement property. So we got to make sure that we check on all these things before we put you in a bad situation and you start stressing out. We want to remove that level of stress. The realtor could be a problem. Again, not us, it'll be the other side, but we're professionals negotiating with other sides and making sure they don't take advantage of us and put these little tricks in place that realtors like to do sometimes to, make sure that they get something out of it. And it's usually the earnest money, but we're going to make sure that we have those contingencies in the contracts to protect you. The lender, the property, the appraiser, the inspectors, escrow, all that could be an issue. So we want to make sure that we have something in place to take care of our clients and protect you from any potential issues. Now, the pre-owned process. It's a little bit different than the new build process. So you always hear get pre-approved first, as I mentioned earlier. Well, if you're looking at a new build, you might not have to do that. So one of the questions we're going to ask you is, when is the absolute latest you want to be moved into your new home? Well, if it's 6 months from now, then we can start shopping for new builds now because the properties they have may not be built for 3 to 6 months. And if that's the case, we can keep shopping. We want to shop till about 60 days out, maybe 45 at the latest. But at that point, we have to make a decision on one or the other. And if you count out some of the new builds and you're like, I've decided we really just don't want that, then pre-owned is what's left. And now it makes more sense anyway, because the homes that are on the market that we send you in a search, if you got 6 months down the road, it's not going to really help you a lot because those houses are more than likely to be gone. Even in this market, they're 85 days on average. 6 months is a lot longer than that. So those same homes that you might be looking at won't be available. And if you don't have a pre-approval letter, when you go shopping for pre-owned, you're not really shopping, because if you want to put in an offer, those agents should be asking for your pre-approval along with the contract that we write for you. And then you can meet with the agent, right? So first you get pre-approved and then meet with the agent. So you talk with us, but really meeting the agent means we're going to go out and tour some homes. We should already have discussed the criteria and all that stuff, but we're going to go out and look at homes. So we do the search. Once we get out there, then we're going to make an offer. Our process for making an offer, we don't want you to have anything less than a 9.5 home on a scale of 1 to 10. If you say less than 9.5, we're going to say, let's keep looking, because we don't want you moving into a home and not be 100% satisfied. So once we make the offer and the offer gets accepted, that means the seller agrees to take it off the market for you and put that earnest money up. We submit the earnest money and option money to the title company, who's going to hold that money in escrow. Then we get a third-party inspection done. And for pre-owned, it's pretty much mandatory. We don't want you to ever move to a house and find out there's all these problems that you would have never moved in if you knew about. So the third-party inspection, we give you maybe a couple of people, 2 or 3 different inspectors. You get to pick the one you think would, meet up to whatever it is you're trying to do, and you like the rapport you build and that type of stuff. Then once you get past the third-party inspection, that's typically when we call the option period. Usually it's 7 days, but once that 7-day option period is up, it's because the inspection is over and the report they give you tells you what kind of repairs are needed. Once we negotiate back and forth, the seller may decide that they don't want to do the repairs, but they're going to reduce the price of the home so that you have that extra money for yourself to do it, and things of that nature. And if you say, no, we don't want to do the repairs, that option period gives you the unrestricted right to walk away. Then the appraisal gets ordered by the lender. Once we say, yep, we've decided to move forward after the inspection and after the option period, now we're ready to go through and get that appraisal done, because the lender's going to start looking for all those things we talked about. Now, if it's fully underwritten, pre-approved, you're gonna be good to go already. But Typically, they usually leave at least a couple of things afterwards. If they have to, spend more money, they don't want to spend it on situations where maybe they don't need it because you turned down that particular house. So in some cases, they can do everything. Some cases they won't. Again, you'll know that depending on what lender we're working with. And then the final walkthrough. So we did the third-party inspection. That was our initial walkthrough to kind of see what's up. Again, we're looking for cosmetic and craftsmanship issues. The final walkthrough, we want to go back and look and say, hey, 2 weeks ago, we went and looked at the house. We put a bunch of blue tape everywhere, took a few pictures, put together a report from the inspector, and you guys should have all of that stuff fixed before we move in. Now, the reason you want that is because once you have all that stuff fixed, then, of course, there is the warranty. And the warranty doesn't fix pre-existing issues. So if everything gets fixed, then your inspection serves and your third-party walkthrough, all that serves is proof that all that stuff was taken care of. So now if it breaks, the warranty has to fix it. And we offer, different warranty companies outside the builder's warranty. They warranty it themselves, but we have third-party warranty companies that we can get you assigned to. And again, we can get the seller to pay for that as well, depending on what position we're in when it comes to negotiating. Then you want to check for insurance, set up your utilities, and then we're going to go to closing. That's where you sign off everything, and they transfer the funds over to the owner. Everybody gets all their fees, all the lenders, the realtors, the title company, everybody gets paid if they didn't get paid already. And then you as the buyer get your keys. Now, the new build process is a little bit different. You work with your buyer rep first. We have a consultation, and as I said, if new build is, if you have a long way out, it makes sense to start looking at new builds early. And then if you don't eliminate them, you always have time because they don't have one house and that's it. Typically they have multiple floor plans and they have a lot of the same floor plans on different lots in that neighborhood. And some of them are going to be finished in 30 days. Some are going to be finished in 60, 90, 120, whatever the case may be. But new builds are going to give you a little bit more time to make a decision. And as long as they're on the table, we can start there. Then we can tour homes. And once you find the one that you like, then you might go to their mortgage company and submit your application. And then if they say, yep, you're good to go, you don't have to worry about going to your own separate lender or anything because a lot of their incentives are tied to using their lender. So if they're going to do a buy down for you and pay your closing costs, cover the origination fee and the title, then you want to work with their lender. And obviously, as you've already seen, it's going to save you a lot of money up front and over time. Would you rather pay a 7% interest rate, $19.95, or a 5% interest rate at $15.60 or something? So obviously that matters. And we want to make sure that whatever you think makes the most sense for you, that's the route we go. Then, of course, we make an offer still because as realtors, no matter whether we're working with new build or not, we have the ability to make offers. We have such good relationships with the builders in every area that we work that we already know the exact lingo to ask. We already know certain homes are going to have bigger differences in price and a lot more wiggle room or negotiation room than others. We might be able to get a washer, a dryer. We might be able to get a fridge. We may be able to get irrigation systems added where they weren't. There's a lot of little things we can do, but they'll usually give us information behind the scenes because a lot of people don't think about it, but the builder rep represents the builder. It's like the seller had an agent. The seller represents the agent. The listing agent represents the seller. And the buyer rep represents the seller of the new build. So whose interest do you think they're going to be looking out for? So you want to make sure you have an agent on your side. And again, our fees get paid through the closing. So if we've already agreed to that number and it gets paid through the closing, we're good to go. And typically builders include whatever it is for the agents, and sometimes they give us bonuses. And if they give us a bonus and we're able to help you with something we need, great. Now, if we negotiate everything off the table so you don't have to come with $1, then we'll probably give you like a $500 gift card to Home Depot or Lowe's. Just let us know what's your favorite. It has to be a gift card that can't be cash or cash equivalent. And then from there, we want to submit the earnest money, same way, but it's just usually one check to the builder rep, and then receive contracts for signature, receive your loan estimate within 72 hours of completing that. And then 30 days when it picks up a little bit and it'll start sounding very familiar to you based on what you heard in the pre-own. So we want to get the third-party inspector. We want that same report turned in 2 weeks prior to them finishing the build of the home, or 2 weeks prior to the closing. They should be finished with the building because we're going to take a look at it. The appraiser is going to get ordered by the lender. the buyer orientation. We're going to have a construction manager walk us through and tell you how to take care of the home. Then we do the blue tape walkthrough to go back and see if they did everything, or to identify everything that needs to be taken care of. Again, that 30-party inspection and everything that we find with the blue tape walkthrough, we're going to put together and send them that report with our punch list of all the things that need to be done. Now, one of the big differences with new builds versus pre-owned, depending on the builder and how big it is, it may be recommended that, you skip that inspection in the beginning. We are going to make it an option. Some people do one before and one during, or 10 months later, because what you can do is keep a running list of all the things that are going on in that brand new house for 10 months, and then have the inspection done. Take that punch list of all the things that need to be worked on and the list from your inspector, just in case things happened over 10 months that wouldn't have happened when you first moved in. And then you can get or take advantage of the warranty from the builder at that point. You have 12 months to use that 1-year warranty. And then you got 2 years for the other items, but that first year, why not? Now, if you say, before we move on, I want to make sure that's taken care of. Again, we'll give you our feedback and you get to make the final decision. And then from there, obviously, once that's done, you're going to get the clear to close. That's when the final loan approval is done. And they say, basically, yep, you're good to go. The bank has agreed that we will help you with this home and get your, paperwork all ready to go for the loan and the note. And then we have to head to closing. So once you get the clear to close, we go back for the final walkthrough, which will be like a day or two or the day of the closing. And we'll go take a look at the house. Once you see the house and you're thinking, hey, everything we want to get done was knocked out, we're happy. Or you might say, hey, they didn't fix this door. It's still crooked and the hinges look weird. Then they have to fix that. Or you can go, and say, we'll take it and we'll just do it when we move in. Whatever the case may be. But that's the whole point of the walkthrough. And of course, we're going to give you our recommendations. Again, you sign off, go to closing, they transfer the funds, and then you get your keys. So they transfer the funds to the previous owner or the builder, and we get the keys and go to your house. You are now a homeowner. So that's the process. And you want to make sure, again, that you do it in the right order because it matters. And for us, we want to make sure that you're working with the right realtor. And your journey is our mission. Finding your perfect 10 home within your budget, time frame, and location is extremely important to us. We move at your timeline. We're not trying to rush you to get into a house. If you're not ready for a year, you're not ready for a year. But we want to make sure that we talk to you today because we can tell you little things to help you save money and get a better idea of what's going to happen over the next few months and put you in a better position to own a home for the least amount of money out of pocket and to help you pay less money over time. And that's the key. We have a rating system and it basically is 1 to 10. But before we get started, we're going to always say, what has you thinking about moving? We want to know how motivated because there's certain reasons people have to move and sometimes they can wait a little bit. But when is the absolute latest you'd like to move into your home? So again, if you think about that, some people can say, well, I'm tired of renting and my lease is up. So boom, first 2 questions. Hey, we got to move. We got to be somewhere ASAP. And we were thinking about moving into a rental home. But after seeing some flyers from you guys, or we saw something on Facebook, man, we're thinking maybe we'll give that a shot. You say you can get us in a home in 60 days. So that's the mark. We want to try to do that. Like, perfect. So we're going to show you some homes that potentially will be closed within that 60-day time frame, and you get to move in. What's the maximum monthly payment you're willing to make with taxes and insurance included? That's why we wanted to go over the monthly payment when it comes to your principal, interest, tax, and insurance, and not the price of the home. Because as you see here, it's going to vary based on where you move, which house, which community, which neighborhood, what side of town. All of that's going to matter. Can you get an interest rate buy down? Can you not get an interest rate buy down? All of that matters. So we ask, what's your max monthly payment you're willing to make? And be honest with us, whatever the max is, we're not going to try to help make you spend over that. Sometimes you'll hear these pre-approvals, you're pre-approved for $400,000, but the payment's going to be $4,000. Well, you're like, I don't want to spend $4,000. I told you we only want to spend $3,000. So if we take you across town and you're like, oh, that's interesting. This is $400,000, but it's only $3,000 a month. Yeah, they were able to buy the rate down, and we got them to reduce the price of the home. So it started at $400,000, but we got them down to $380,000, and you're good to go. Whatever the case may be, we're going to be the experts. We do that so you can focus on taking care of your family and doing your job, and we'll do the heavy lifting for you on the real estate side. So which is the most preferred side of town, of course? Is it closer to work or your school district important for your kids? All that matters. Now, once we know this information, we're going to ask you, can you see yourself and your family living here? And if so, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you say? Again, we don't want you to move unless it's a 9.5. We don't want you to put in an offer. But if you say it's R11, yeah, that's what we like to hear. Like, yeah, this is everything we wanted, then some. And we see that a lot with new builds and even some pre-owned if it's more than they were expecting. Sometimes you're like, oh, that actually has a small pool back there or whatever. It could be anything, right? So as long as we get you in a home that meets your requirements and you're not feeling like you had to settle for anything, we're going to move forward. And then with all that being said, we want to be your agent for life. You know, we do service before, during, and after. So we also want you to share this with other people and let them know, hey, my agent does a lot for us. And it doesn't matter whether it's housekeeping, lawn maintenance, baked goods, or skincare. We want to help you with everything because we know professionals in the area. And because of our relationship with them, they will be willing to pass on certain savings to you. And of course, we vetted them. So if we haven't, we will make sure we contact some of these folks for you and get them going on your behalf. One of the things I like to do for my clients is I'm like, after 30 days of you being moved in, you probably want a little bit of a break. Let's go ahead and do that for you. And I'll bring a housekeeper over to clean your house so you can take a break and let them clean. Now, if you want to keep that relationship afterwards, that's on you. The first one's on me. You guys can work that out once you meet the housekeeper. So hopefully you see how that works, but we want to be your agent for life, which means we want to keep that relationship because by the time you decide to sell, maybe you want to buy another property, maybe you have friends and family, we want to operate almost 100% referral based. And if you know that working with J-Prime Realty Group and our team members, you're going to be in really good shape. All right, so that's the 5 ugly truths. And as you got to see here, you know, not knowing the difference between closing cost and down payment, that could hurt you. Not knowing the difference between pre-quals and pre-approval, that could hurt you as well. All these things could hurt you. Why the 5 ugly truths matter is what you don't know can hurt you. And so we want to make sure that you see these things that could hurt you and expose them to you. And that's why we go over this. Number 3, not knowing the different what different lenders provide, the different options and the programs they have. Number 4, not knowing the difference between renting, new build, pre-loved homes. And of course, number 5, not following the right process in the right order at the right time. So I'm sure you can see now why all this is so important and why we just had to share this information with you, because that's what this is all about. We want to give everyone the opportunity to become homeowners because everyone deserves that. If you're interested in getting a home, you're serious about that, we're going to do everything in our power to get you there, whether it's now or 12 to 24 months from now. We're going to give you everything that you need, including a game plan. Now, with that being said, if you attended and watched this or you happen to be catching the replay, here's some of the free resources you're going to get. It's a home affordability calculator because in a lot of cases, if you know you've been paying rent of $1,800, maybe you don't want to pay much more than that. So you want to determine what the monthly payment is, not how much the house is worth, right? Because that's going to be the difference. A test drive voucher. We like to say test drive because it's like, you know, sometimes people are like, I'm not sure I want to go into a home or not. I really don't want to stay in this rental, but we might just move into another rental home. It's like, all right, let's just go out on a test drive, take you to a new build. And I think about it just like you would a new car. You sit in that new car, you got the new car smell, right? So we want you to have the new home smell. And it may motivate you to go somewhere else. Plus, you may realize, wait a minute, this isn't expensive as I thought it was going to be. It's actually better for us. And if that becomes the case, why would you want to move slower than faster when you might actually get a really good break on this house that you will miss out on if you wait too long? And that's the key, because these specials aren't offered all the time. There's certain parts of the year where the numbers go up and down, and we can't predict which they are. So again, if you buy a house now and the interest rates change later and they go lower, you can always refinance. But if the price of the home goes up too high, even if you refinance, the payment's still going to be higher than it would have been. So that's the things you got to be thinking about. Then we have a client appreciation rebate. Again, we help with a couple of different things. Between the voucher and the client appreciation, the test drive voucher will give you $250 rebate from that, and then another $250 for client appreciation rebate. So we'll help you cover like your inspection, your appraisals, the stuff that typically would come out of pocket. You'll get it reimbursed through closing, and that's our gift to you for being our clients. Then there's a home equity analysis tool. So if you happen to own a house and you want to see what value it might have, we'll send the link for that as well. So you click through all this different stuff to see how these resources can help you. And then a link to shop for homes. So there's a couple of different links. For pre-owned, we might send you just homes that come in your inbox. And then for new builds, there might be a couple of links where you can check different places to look at different homes. And that way, before we go shopping, we want to make sure that you do your due diligence and do a drive-by. And as long as we have the paperwork signed, because based on a lawsuit that the National Association of Realtors had a couple of years back, we have to make sure to share with you and be transparent about how we get paid and what our fees are. And hopefully I've done that already, but again, we just have to have paperwork signed. In the real estate game, we have to have everything signed or it didn't happen. And we don't want to get anybody in trouble. So the key is once you realize, hey, this is who I want to work with, just understand that's what's required is the paperwork. And the builder reps, correction, the buyer reps are always on your side versus the seller agents being on the other side or the builder's reps being on the builder side. You want someone to represent you, and the best way to get that done is to work with an actual buyer rep. We are specialists in that, and that's what we want you to take away from this. Now, I know you guys are feeling a little bit stressed and anxious and maybe concerned, but I want to know how many people are feeling more excited, encouraged, and educated than what they felt when they first started watching this. Again, put in the chat box, me, if that's you. And as you do that, I want to wrap this up with the quiz. So for all the people that were paying attention throughout, here's your quiz question. And I want you guys to say it out loud in your homes, even though we may not be able to hear you. But what do you do if you need help with real estate? Yes, you call J-Prime first. That's the goal. That's what we want you guys to do, because I'm sure you can see at this point that there's a lot of things we can do for you to help you that you may not get from other people. And that's really what we want you to see. We want you to be taken care of in ways that potentially no one else can take care of you. And with that being said, of course, set up your one-on-one appointments so we can give you your free game plan. Again, whether it's now or 12 months from now, check the link in the chat or somewhere on this page where you can check the link to set your appointment one-on-one, and you'll get that free consultation. And that's how we want that to work. Frequently asked questions. Again, we don't tell you no, we tell you how, but some of the frequently asked questions we get is like, how long does the initial consultation usually take? Usually not more than 30 minutes, unless you got a whole lot of questions, but we can do it in 20 to 30 minutes because we're going to send you a pre-buyer rep package, and you can read through it and get some information out of that before we start our conversation. Do you need to bring anything with you? Well, the stuff that we're going to send you, there might be some assignments in there. You might need to start filling out a few forms to kind of determine, maybe if you use like the home affordability calculator and you're like, yep, that's where we want to stay. We figure that number out. We know, looking at our budget, we need to stay around this number. Perfect. It's like, how quickly can you tour homes after the meeting? Oh, I mean, if we know it's going to be a while before you go shopping for homes, we're still going to meet you at one home. We want to give you that experience. We want you to have that test drive so you can go, yeah, this is going to motivate us to go out and follow this game plan. And we've seen that a lot. We've had people who saw a house and they're like, oh man, I don't want to miss out. And just going to see the house was enough for them to go, and I can get it for this price and only pay this amount per month. And it's like, yeah. And they were super excited about that. And then what happens if they're not ready to buy right now? Again, we're on your timeline. And if there's certain things that need to be done in order to get you in a position to buy, then we'll coach you and help you through that and be ready when you are. And is there any cost for this consultation? No, there's no cost for the consultation. As you know, the webinar didn't cost anything. There's no additional webinars we're going to send out your way and try to get a fee or a payment for that. But the consultation is going to be via Zoom. And you just book it on our appointment calendar, and we'll meet you at that time and go over everything that you have questions about from watching this webinar and any additional questions that may be a little bit more confidential and personal, and we will guide you from there. So with that being said, hopefully you guys got as much out of this as you possibly could. And we provided a lot of good information that makes your decision a lot easier. And if for any reason you feel like you need to talk to us before you get on that, just reach out to us and say, hey, I just want to, you get our contact information, and just maybe email us and say, hey, I don't want to wait for the appointment. I want to talk to you guys right away. Is that cool? Yeah, absolutely. Just let us know, and we'll book the call through our email and make sure that we get you in sooner than later. And with that being said, hopefully you guys understand exactly why you want to know the 5 ugly truths about purchasing a home and why you don't want those to be issues for you. Now, with that, you guys have a great day, and we look forward to working with you.